Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.
This is another Infosol production. This is another Infosol production. Fossil Prod. Fossil Prod.
This is an original instrumental. It's an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.
This is another Infosol production. Fossil Prod. Fossil Prod. Fossil Prod.
This is an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music. Enjoy, enjoy.
This is another Infosol production. Fossil Prod.
This is an original instrumental. It's an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music. Soulful music. Soulful music. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.
This is another Infosol production. This is another Infosol production. Fossil Prod. Fossil Prod.
This is an original instrumental. It's an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music. Soulful music. Soulful music. Enjoy, 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 enjoy.
This is another Infosol production. Fossil Prod.
This is an original instrumental. Soulful music. Soulful music. Enjoy, enjoy,
This is another Infosol production. Another Infosol production. Fossil Prod.
This is an original instrumental.
This is another Infosol production. Fossil
This is an original instrumental. Soulful music.
This is another Infosol production.
This is an original soulful music. Enjoy.
There is a fossil production.
This is
This is another Infosol production. Fossil
This is
This is another Infosol production.
soulful music. Enjoy.
This is another Infosol production.
This is the original instrumental. Soulful music.
This is another.
All right, and we finally come to our last segment for the 15th annual Mobile Street Renaissance Festival. We've gone through just a diatribe of good information all day today. We started with the Graced Today voter info from the NAACP. We had some of the politicians from the SB campaign, and Monica Miller was on Living Without Tobacco. We had that. We've had Black Lives Matter Squat with Corina Price, and Ground Zero with Mr. Christopher Preston and Ms. Clark. And now our last segment is called Why Vote with Mr. Ken Chambers. Mr. Chambers, you've got a nice committee up here with you to talk about why we should vote. It's up to you, sir. You've got the microphone.
Okay, we're up here to discuss the issue of why vote. Close. I got you.
Microphone closer to you.
Oh, you need it this close? Yes. Okay. Well, listen, it's so many reasons why you should vote, and if we just thought about it, I'm sure we'd come up with a ton of them. But the most basic reason is it's a civic duty. You know, it's a civic duty to vote. Everything that you do when it in regards to voting affects every aspect of your life. You know, people ask you why vote. A super important reason why to vote is it when you vote not to just elect your local elected officials or your state officials or even the president of the United States, but even on that level, even on the national level, it's so important that we vote and we get the right people in the office. Because like this last administration, Donald Trump has came in and appointed over 200 judges, district judges, appellate judges, and these are lifetime appointments. And out of the 200 judges that he's appointed, only 8 of them been black. So how do we level the playing field when you've got a president who comes in and appoints more judges than any other president since Jimmy Carter, and you want some equality within the justices? Within the justices. I mean, that's just super important on a national level by itself. That won't affect us just for the 4 years he'll be in office, but that'll affect us for the next 40 years. You know, anytime I gotta go and sit before as a black male, and we already know when you're looking at statistics, and when it comes to black males in the court system, but just black people in general, that we're not going to get the same treatment when it comes to sentencing and sending people to jail as our white counterparts. So if nothing else, even if you the guy on the street, when I'm talking to people on the street and you out here, you know you ain't doing it right, and you got family member, everybody up on this panel got somebody in their family who's been to jail and felt like they didn't get the right type of treatment, or the judge didn't treat them right, or you got a harsher sentence. Well, that's real important. Even when it comes down to the local, when you're talking about district attorneys and all of this, is real important that you put the right type of people in office, because it not only affects you, but it affects everybody in your family and everything around. That's right. What you think about it, CJ?
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. CJ Lawrence, CEO of Black with No Chaser. Ken, I'm glad to be here with you. Brothers, I'm glad to be here with you as well. Truly enjoyed what you had to say earlier, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
What I would say to that, and y'all excuse my mask, I've been trying to get my social distancing on.
Social distance.
But if we want to get right there, I think that's a good place to start. One of the things we look at when we look at a state like Mississippi, for example, and we're talking about the power of our local vote, the power of our state vote, we look at Medicaid expansion directly, right?
Right.
And we look at the fact that many of our legislatures here in the state of Mississippi rejected the notion of expanding Medicaid under what many people often refer to as Obamacare, which we know as the Affordable Health Care Act.
Right.
Now that was an intentional move. The reason it was intentional was, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Chuck? You need me to speak up? You need me to put my mic up? Okay, excuse me. So I was speaking about the Affordable Health Care Act, often referred to as Obamacare, and access to health care. Us understanding that Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the nation, we understand that rejecting $6 billion, in addition to that, we rejected 60,000 potential healthcare jobs, right? In doing so, ultimately what we've done is cripple our community, and now we're seeing the direct impact of that on our community, right? We've seen the impact of what's happened in Mississippi. 1 in 1,000 Black people in the state of Mississippi have succumbed to COVID-19 since the beginning of the pandemic.
Wow.
In March. 1 in 1,000 of us in the state of Mississippi. By the end of the year, it could potentially go down to 1 in 500 Black people directly impacted and potentially deceased as a result of COVID-19. One, because of lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to healthcare jobs as a result, and a direct access to affordable healthcare. You have people and candidates like Senator Mike Espy, for example, who had, I think, some of his surrogates came and spoke today, and they spoke directly about issues like expanding healthcare. The reason that that's critical is because we understand how we are as a community. And when I say I'm talking about Black folk.
Right.
How we are directly impacted when it comes to healthcare. When it comes to our health, we are already susceptible to certain things when it comes to the society. Brother already spoke about the way that stress impacts us as a community. The way that that things that we deal with, that we're more vulnerable to things like diabetes and hypertension and things of that nature. Well, voting has a direct impact on that. through our legislatures. The thing that we often have to know is our legislatures are the ones who are making our laws, right? Both on a state level as well as on a national level. We need to know that our representatives are the ones, many times when we get upset about what is and what isn't being done, that we should look directly to our legislature and our Senate, right, as it relates to who is making the laws that are directly impacting us when it comes to healthcare, criminal justice reform, and many of these things. Then you look to your executive branch, right? Your executive branch being the ones who are carrying out the laws, who are making sure that those laws are enforced. That's when you look to your presidential elections or your mayoral race or your gubernatorial races and things of that nature. And you must understand there that they are essentially enforcing what it is that the legislature oftentimes have carried out. So you want to have an enforcement body and a legislative body that can work in conjunction with one another, but also that has the ability to check one another. Thank goodness for that right now on a federal level. Thank goodness for that. You look at your judicial system, right? And this is something that directly impacts many of us. I see it so often as an attorney, particularly in the courtrooms, right? You see it on a daily basis when our communities might be 40, 50, 60% African American, right? But the courtrooms, when it comes to who's awaiting either a sentence, awaiting trial, or things of that nature, is 90% African American. Right. And so the dynamics, no matter what community you go to, the disparity is significant. How do we change that, and how do we challenge that? Right. By determining who our district attorneys are going to be, who our judges are going to be, who is going to be appointed even as our public defenders, because that also matters. And many times that's appointed through the judge's office. If you understand that, you at the very least want somebody that's in there that at least has your best interest at heart, or that's appointing people not to put friends in positions, but to put people in positions that truly care about and are committed to justice. Right. So there's a great many ways in which our vote impacts us. The thing that I try not to do is preach to people. I think, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but what I'm saying is I think that the way that the messaging is received today is different than maybe it was received before. And I don't want to shame anyone into feeling like it's necessary for them to vote, but I want to lead them to the understanding of why it is that literally everything we do is impacted by our political process, by the electoral process, and why electoral politics and being involved on so many levels is critical, and why it is in a great many ways our opportunity to pick up our rock and our slingshot in the way that David did in order to fight Goliath. And so I think it's really critical for people to understand that. I look forward to truly engaging even more with you all about it. But that would be where I would want people to begin. We are at a point right now where we are literally, as Black folks, trying to breathe in America, literally in every way. Right. The reason I'm talking to you right now, sitting next to you with a mask on, is because we're trying to breathe in America. Right. But in addition to trying to breathe in America through these masks, we're trying to breathe in America through who's enforcing the laws and how those laws are enforced, and what happens when those laws are enforced to our detriment and results in our death. So there's a great many reasons why we should be politically inclined, politically engaged now more than ever, truly. And so that's where I'll start, Ken, and I appreciate you asking me that question.
Okay, Chris. Now, a lot of times I hear people want to kind of shame people into voting by saying things like, well, people died for you to vote. Could you kind of elaborate on why that message right there doesn't necessarily work anymore?
Yeah, it doesn't work as well anymore because these young people are so far removed from the people, from the Medgar Evers who was shot in the back of his head in his yard after a hard day's work, just wanting to go inside and get something to eat with his wife, looking through the kitchen window. These young people are so far removed from the Vernon Damers who were killed trying to get back in the house to get their other children out to spare them just a few miles from here. These young people are so far removed from it that they have no real connection to those events. And so as a result, They don't feel they have a lot in common with these people. What young people do respond to, though, is the question of, what does this have to do with me today, right now? And if you can't show young people how their vote actually translates into and is directly tied to a better life for them, then you're not going to get their attention. You can find a young person, you can say, what do you want to do in life? Well, I just want to ride around and listen to my music all day. I live with my grandmom and I got a car and I just want to ride around and listen to my music all day. Well, you need to be trying to vote for a mayor who's going to hire police officers, who's going to vet police officers, who's going to make sure he has use of force training, make sure that he has racial sensitivity training. So while you riding around listening to your music every day, you're not getting stopped on every corner. You're not getting stopped every time you turn around. Every time he sees your car, he's stopping you just because he feels like stopping you. If you don't want to do nothing but ride around all day, you still need to vote. If you're one of those kind of people say, well, I just want to work my job and I just want to be left alone. You know, young people, I work out there and I make pretty good money and all I want to do is be left alone. Well, you need to vote because your tax rates are directly tied to your vote. Show them where more money in their pocket will help them to take a vacation once or twice a year. Show them where more money in their pockets will allow them to go buy. If they want to spend it and go buy a pair of Air Jordans, I don't judge people for what they do. If that's what you want to do with your money, your vote is directly tied to how much money you have left to do these things. If you want fair wages, your vote is depending upon fair wages. We are not at a place where your supervisor just can't work you as long as he wants to without any breaks and without any overtime pay, without some labor laws. Labor laws did not come because people who worked who had corporations decided that they just got tired of seeing their employees walking around looking tired after about 4 hours, and we just gonna give them a break because we're tired of seeing them look tired. We're just gonna give them a 30-minute lunch break because we're just tired of seeing them look tired. We're gonna give them a Family Medical Leave Act because we're tired of seeing her work until the day before she has the baby and have to hurry up and come back to before her 6 weeks are up. Those things didn't change because employers and corporations decided it was just a good thing to be fair. We had to have labor laws. We had to have child labor laws. We had to have laws concerning unemployment, laws concerning equal employment, laws concerning pay. Well, we had to have minimum wage laws. They need to be augmented and adjusted, but all of that came through the vote. And so I don't care what you want to do in life, whether you just want to work your job and go home every day, you need to vote. I don't care if you want to ride around every day. That's your prerogative. That's your car and your gas. And if your grandmama allows you to do that, ride around. That's your business. But you need to understand that your vote is directly tied to your livelihood and your well-being. If you're one of these super religious people, well, I just got me and my God and all I care about, I'm saved and I'm sanctified and I'm filled with the Holy Ghost and I'm on my way to heaven. Well, let me tell you something. You need to vote because your religious freedom depends on whether your ability to go to church depends on whether you got religious freedom or not. You can't say, well, I just love to go to church and get my praise on and all that kind of stuff. Well, you can't get your praise on if we don't have some laws regulating how high your light bill can be, if we don't have some laws regulating renters to be sure that you're not living in a slum and having to try to go to church on Sunday and get your praise on after you just got up out of your house. That's a slum. So every bit of that is tied to your vote. Every bit of that is tied to your vote. And religious people, and I know, I feel like I got a right, because I've been in the church all my life and I'm a pastor, I feel like I got a right to address us as religious people. Don't be so religious people that they're so religious that you can't vote. Well, it's all in God's hands. Well, God doesn't have hands. God gave the task of making sure things worked out. He gave that to you. He put it in your hands. Your job is to get out and vote and do what you can civically to make some changes. Because faith without works is dead. You can talk about doing something, but if you don't, you can trust God all you want to. I trust God to feed you, and don't ever get up in the kitchen and go fix something to eat and watch what happens. Trust God to make sure that you get enough water to drink, and never get up in the kitchen and go and turn on the faucet and get some water. You got to trust God to do what you can't do, but you got to do what you can do. You got to rally around your local leaders. You got to vet people who are good for you. And another thing, stop allowing other people to send people into our community and put them up in front of us and say, y'all, this is who y'all need to vote for. You need to vet them. You need to see how they acted on the last job. You go to their Facebook page. Ken, I got time. I go to their Facebook page. I go back go back 6 years and see what kind of stuff you're saying, because I need to know who's trying to lead me. I need to know who's trying to lead me. I need to know who I'm voting for. Stop being apathetic. Let's get out and vote, because there's not an area in your life that's not affected by vote. Well, I got plenty of food in the cabinet. Well, do you know that that food had to be inspected by the USDA? Do you know that that food had to be kept safe and at a certain temperature until it got to you? Do you know that if there wasn't a vote that made sure that these organizations were put into place, that you would have food that might be rotten? Your expiration date may or may not be a true expiration date. All of that comes through your vote. We cannot afford to sit at home and wait on God to do what we ought to be doing. And we should not be sitting at home. And God knows I trust our good leaders who try to give us good people to vote for. We should not be sitting at home waiting on somebody else to tell us who to vote for. You need to get out and vote, because every area of your life is affected by the vote. And so the vote affects everything. Your ability to go to the hospital and have a child in a safe environment, or to have your children born in a safe and clean and sterile environment. These hospitals don't keep everything clean just because they like cleanliness. There are laws that make sure they don't hire so many blacks per so many whites just because they think it's a good thing to do. There are laws that make sure that you have to be an equal opportunity employer. So let's get out to vote. Let's stop talking to young people about how many people died, because for them, these were just distant creatures, figments of history that really have no real connection to them. But tell them, I told my son, he got his check. He knew how many hours he worked. And so he was up half the night waiting on his check to hit his card, because he knew how many hours he worked. When his check was about $46 shorter than what he thought it was, and he had already decided he was going to buy him a Green Bay jersey, and decided he was going to buy him some shoes, and he had to make a choice because his check wasn't what he thought it ought to be. That was a good chance for me to tell him, see, this is why your vote matters. This is why your vote matters. You still living in my house, and none of the bills come in your name, and even now, your life is being affected by your vote. We got to show young people where their everyday existence is affected by the vote. That's important, man. Really,
it's real important. Now, just to take the conversation in a different direction. CJ, you from Hattiesburg?
That's right.
I'm from Jackson. I've been about 16 years, so I'm from Hattiesburg too.
Right.
Preston, you from Hattiesburg? You from here? Now, you from Hattiesburg. Now, last time I checked, the demographics in Hattiesburg was probably around 54, 55% black, maybe 60% black right now. We stay in a city where it's majority black, but we don't have the same, it's not reflected in our local government. In other words, a good reason why it's important to vote is because the census this year.
That's right, absolutely.
And the way they draw the lines
That's right.
for the local city council is based on numbers from the census. And we know all across the country how they stacked us and packed us, and they gerrymandered the districts to so that we won't have the what they call it, equity, or the same amount of the people in the positions in order for us to be majority in not only in the city, but in the local government. You can't, it's real important just because they're politics. End up in a situation where we majority in the city, but we ain't got majority representation.
Apathy.
You see what I'm saying? That's what happened. For 16 years, we had a black man in the city of Hattiesburg. The Hattiesburg that I knew when I moved to Hattiesburg was that type of city, was a great place to live because of what this man did. But because of voter apathy and people not getting out to vote, we end up in a situation where they're building a $22 million, $25, $26 million police complex. And I look over there and ain't no black contractors out there making no money, but you right there in the center of the hood. How does that happen?
And your
You know-
sons and daughters gonna help to maintain that place
Right.
through fines and over policing and
Through all that.
all of that.
Through all that. Tickets gonna go. I don't see
That's budgeted in.
you in our community. You make it. We make up 60% of the community. You issuing out these contracts, but you ain't giving none of them to no black contractors. See the,
That should be if you want to speak.
I just wanted to say, you know, when you look at it on a national level, we can. I'm going to come back to the local level. Let's look at it on the national level to see how politics works. They got this guy named William Barr. Bill Barr is the Attorney General, and he's working for Donald Trump.
Right.
They had a general that went into court and pleaded guilty, and this man wants to come back and tell the judges, well, let's kind of reverse that a little bit. He was
Yeah.
under the influence. He was crazy.
Right.
But that means that those people vote together. That particular coalition of Republicans vote together.
Right.
Now, what we should do is figure out a way. Somebody got to crack this ignorant gene. There's an ignorant gene out
Okay.
there that we have.
Okay. Somebody had to
Not
say it.
wanting to pay attention to the important things of voting, like we're talking about right now,
Right.
and business and being able to be men in the community. Somebody got to crack that gene. So
I agree.
let's go back to the local level. If I learned this from I'm an old man, I'm 70 years old.
Okay.
I learned this in Mississippi when I was here. We had Mobile Street used to be awesome. I used to come to a movie up here called the Star Theater in the 50s. In the 50s. But now what I'm saying, trying to get to this, we have got to elect our people and be able to do things like they do. Not that black people, what I'm talking about, I learned in Hattiesburg, we won't do what's wrong, but we will do what's right by black people.
Right.
That's right.
So if we got people in government, they'll be making good rules for the black community.
Right.
Some of the streets will be paved, like May Avenue and all these places around here. Those streets should be nice and paved as long as those people been there.
That's right.
Okay, they've been paying taxes all their life.
Right.
That's right.
The schools should be better. Shouldn't be a person studying without a laptop or something like
That's
that.
right.
Where I'm at in Columbus, Georgia, they got 34,000 students and every person got a tablet.
See,
Every person got a tablet.
your vote matters.
The vote matters. We got a 5-4 city council over there, and that money they got a splosh, and that money goes into that school. They take care of them.
Right.
But what I'm getting at is this: at some juncture, some of you younger brothers have got to crack this ignorant code,
Okay,
this
okay.
ignorant gene we got out
We
there.
got to talk to each other. I agree.
You know. But so that was my point about the importance of voting, is because if we can vote, we can control stuff
Right.
and make things happen. They do it all along. That's why we don't have, because we don't vote. We don't have because we don't vote. They vote and they got. So look at the difference. I mean, do you want to continue to not have and not vote, or do you want to vote and start having? It's that simple.
And the reality of it is people want us to pray for the change we want to see while they organize around the change they want to see. But they want you to pray. They want you to trust God. You know, trust God. When you start talking about something specific to or specific for black people, then they'll accuse you of being racist and say, well, we all God's people. Well, we were all created equal, but all of us wasn't slaves. According to the Constitution, we're all created equal. But some of us, slaves, we all had certain inalienable rights. Among them were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But all of us didn't enjoy that benefit of that. So all has never really meant all. So we have to be careful about letting other people convince you that just group in with everybody else and you're going to be okay. We've done the grouping in thing and it didn't work out for us.
That's right. And
We
one
didn't-
one
we
quick
done
thing here too. One thing we've got to do as a race across, not just in Mississippi, in the Constitution, they're saying there's somewhere that we are 3/5 of a human being. We are
Absolutely.
3/5 of a human
Absolutely.
being. That's why the police don't respect us, because they got us as 3/4 of a human being. But you know what that means? It takes 3 of them to whoop one of us.
Yeah.
It takes 3 white men to whoop 1 black man. Literally it does.
Uh-huh.
So, but we got to get that changed first thing,
Yeah.
so that we'd be equal,
Right.
completely equal. And they can't say, well, no, we don't need to give them over there because they're only 3/5.
And the
They can use a hand-me-down book.
Right.
Your child get a brand new book in 2020. In 2021, we'll give them that book. You get another one, a new one in 2021.
Right.
We got to stop that.
And the thing about the 3/5 compromise, you would think that they were trying to extend rights to black people by giving them 3. They didn't want you to vote. Your vote didn't count less. No, you still can't vote. We just want you to be counted in the census
Right.
as 3/5 because in the South you had so many white plantation owners. There are many regions in the South where there were more black slaves in that region than there were white slaves owners, and only the men could vote. So you had to be a white male to vote, and so there were more black people in those communities. So the people in the South wanted black people to be represented, not so they could have an opportunity to vote. That wasn't about voting. So I was just showing you how they were trying to undermine your vote, even with the 3/5 compromise. We want them to be represented in the census, and then we'll snatch the food out of their mouths by not allowing them to vote. So they helped me to get my property and my district broader by their name being on the roll, But I don't help them by giving them an opportunity to vote. So if I'm told, so I'll say that it takes. So they're 3/5 of a man. We'll let them count as 3/5 of a human being, and that's what I say to people who always tell me, "Well, racism goes both ways." I ask them, when was the last time that your humanity was measured in fractions? If a white man walks up, it takes a black man and a half, more than a black, just over half, to equal that white man under 3/5 compromise. You only 3/5. So if you show up and a white guy shows up, you need to bring at least more than half of your brother with you before you could be a black man. And then that was just to be counted so that I could get my district represented and get taxes and get more representatives in Washington. But it wasn't so that you could vote. I'm snatching the vote out of your mouth, but I need your black body to help me to get counted in the census. That's a sickness, man.
Right. I mean, I think that what we're talking about here ultimately is self-determination, right? And understanding the power that we have as a people, the power that comes with this vote, right? And if it wasn't a powerful thing, then they would not try to deprive us of it. They wouldn't have tried to deprive us they wouldn't have tried to deprive us when we got here on ships. They wouldn't have tried to deprive us through Jim Crow. They wouldn't have allowed us. I won't say they allowed us to have it, but after Reconstruction, obviously we got it. And Senator Hiram Revels, who was one of the first black senator ever elected from the state of Mississippi after Reconstruction, became one of the most powerful and outspoken people on the Senate. They had to get rid of then they enacted Jim Crow, right? They got Jim Crow and the black codes in there so that they could ultimately then again deprive us of those opportunities. We did not again obtain those opportunities until 1965, right? Or 1964. And so when you look at those, when you look at what's happening here, right? The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act being enacted, you still have resistance taking place. And now voter suppression, much like slavery, just mutated in the way that it took place. It mutated into voter IDs and gerrymandering. It mutated into disenfranchisement through incarceration and misinformation. And that's what you see as it relates to what's taking place even here. But I do think that voter apathy has become a very real thing because what we often have to understand is that, again, when we understand what the executive has the power to do and not to do, we need to understand what the legislative body also has the power to do and not to do. And when it's not working in conjunction with one another, when you have a resistant legislative body that is essentially fighting against the executive body, right, then it's very difficult for the executive body to get the things done that we need done. And so what they often do is they'll bring us shiny things, right, and they'll tell us that those are things that we should appreciate. I think you can do a lot of superficial things, but until you're doing substantive things in the black community, right, then you're not doing anything that's real, that's tangible, that's something that we can pass along from generation to generation. If you look on Main Street right now, you'll see that there's development taking place on Main Street, right, that this is multi-million-dollar development in the same community that they had the ability to pay attention to for years. Mm-hmm. But they were resistant to that change when it was us trying to make those changes. And to me, I think that much of what we've seen, both from a political standpoint, publicly and privately, off the record, many of the manipulations that we've seen have been truly about taking back that power for the purpose of being able to put those dollars and line dollars in the pockets of people that look like them and not like us.
You're right.
And I think the reason that you do that is because if you keep us in economic bondage, then you keep us beholden to you. And any crumb you give us at that point in time will be like a feast, rather than you know what I mean? Like you give a crumb to a starving man, and it's a feast. And so that's what I think we have to understand here is why were we starving in the first place? Is the question that we have to begin to ask ourselves. Why was the council those 16 years that brother was in there? When did that resistance start? Why did it start? And what can we do to begin to challenge it today?
The first thing we can do, we can understand we can get out and vote. Like that's what we up here talking about, getting out and vote. So we've got an election coming up, a local election, mayoral election coming up in 2021. It's going to be so important that we get out and vote. Because let me tell you one thing about Hattiesburg. We have the majority. Only thing we got to do is show up. If we show up, we can take a city. We can take a council. We can take a community. See, we got to get out of the position, stop asking people for stuff, and just start taking stuff. And then when you get in there with the understanding, let me do something for my people, the folks who put me in there. You know, a lot of times we get politicians in the office and they want to be the such and such for everybody. But when we look at when they elect people, it ain't no question about when they go in there what we expect. We don't expect anything because it's almost like the spoils of war. My side won. Like with Donald Trump, my side won, so you're going to do what I say. So why would we get elected to public office? We don't have that same attitude or that same mentality. If black folks put me in a position, let me get out here and let me do something for us. Let me do something for my community. Because what the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all ships. So I can look at any community across the country and look at the plight of black people and see that we at the bottom of the barrel. So if I can put in some efforts to lift that community, it's going to lift everybody up. So what's wrong with that? But what I often find is when you go and discuss with these elected officials and they want to talk about hanging street lights and cutting grass. No, let's talk about the allocation of resources. Let's talk about this money. When we get into money talk, you want to wave this in our face, but at the same time, ain't nobody in the black community making no money. You don't have businesses. We ain't getting no contracts. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of development going on in Midtown, but what's going on our side of town? $60 million worth of development. I see Midtown being developed. What's going on with Twin Forks Rising?
If it's 50%, if this city is 50%, I would think that as a community, the people of the community should be demanding that at the very least 40 to 45% of the contracts are going to minority-owned businesses, black-owned, minority-owned businesses in this community. As far as either subcontracting is concerned, you got to have, if you're gonna get a contract in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, that is 54, 55, 56% black.
That's right.
You need to have some minority businesses attached to those contracts.
Let's be real clear. We don't want to say minority. We want to say black-owned businesses. Because when you say minority business, then they play the white woman game. And we ain't playing them type of games no more. So if any money coming through this city, is only right that if we make up 54, 60% of the city, that we get we get an equitable part of that.
You can't skip that.
You can't skip that many people. So I look around and I say, man, what?
Now the thing that'll happen, and you saw this with Wells Fargo recently, they'll say, well, we looked for people, but we couldn't find anybody that was qualified. Right. Or we couldn't find any businesses or any subs. Well, how hard did you really look? Right. Even if you bring in outside subcontractors beyond the city limits,
exactly,
they can then hire on these folks to ensure that it occurs in the manner in which we're seeking. But when you're talking about building up people equitably, right, and economically, we have to understand first those numbers, understand the power in those numbers, and understand how we must wield those numbers collectively and in solidarity with one another. If we don't fully understand that, what my parents and others used to do is they used to essentially have a caucus about, hey, these are the candidates. These are going to be our candidates. And my brother spoke to that earlier.
Right.
Vetting our own candidates, deciding for ourselves who is going to be representing our community beforehand. We know who's going to represent Ward 5. We know who's going to represent Ward 2. We've convened about this. We know who's going to be sitting on the board of supervisors on our behalf in our community. to speak on the things that matter to us, and that's not gonna hit us with the okie doke when they get in there.
Right.
You know, because they're skin folk and not kin folk.
Right.
And so I think it's very critical that we get back to that convening, and sometimes we have to bring this very message, like as the brother said earlier, we have to put on our tennis shoes and we have to be prepared to come into the community and talk to the people in a way that is far less about preaching to them and far more about one, hearing what it is,
Reaching what it is.
exactly, hearing what it is that's the issue, and saying, hey, if sister said poverty is one of the main issues impacting our community, right? If that's the case, that means jobs need to be in our community, resources and funding need to be coming back into our community. We need to be asking questions about why that isn't happening, and making demands about how that should be happening, what that must look like if you plan to be sitting in this seat come 2021,
Right.
you know. So that's my position on it.
Well, that ain't necessarily the plan, but I know one thing. As a people, as a community, we have to start taking voting seriously on every level of government, because it's attached to everything we do. And as soon as we understand that, we really, that's really something you just got to get in your soul. Like, if nothing else, I'm going to the polls. If nothing else, at all costs, I'm going to the polls. That's why I try to take my daughters with me when I go. You know, because that's so important. And like you said, if it wasn't important, they wouldn't try to keep it away from us. It's just a strategic effort right here in this town to suppress the vote. You know, they try voter intimidation. They've convicted people of voter fraud. They've been voting from the same address since they was 18 years old. So it's been several tactics to discourage people from voting and try to keep people from voting.
So people on voter rolls,
Purging the voter rolls, because they understand the power that you have when you control those positions of power.
now expand it all across the South. What you just said, take that to Georgia. What happened when Stacey Abrams, our sister from right with Hattiesburg
From
Town,
Hattiesburg,
right? You look at that, you see what happened there. Election stole. You look at South Carolina and what's happening in South Carolina with the gerrymandering and redistricting, where they admitted to having manipulated it, and they have records of it. But yet that ain't a story that's really on the national radar like that, or taking place or in the public eye in the way that they are attempting to stoke fear about mail-in voting or us showing up at the polls. You look at Florida, where they attempted to say they gerrymandered in Florida and said that, oh, we drew these districts black. But what they did was drew prisons into those districts where we are obviously the ones that are being massively incarcerated, and counted the prisoners as people that had the ability to vote, knowing that they had disenfranchised many of them,
Right.
and said, well, the reason you're not living in this district because you have voter apathy in this district, when the reality is we've drawn you into a district and said it is a majority black district, but I won't say a majority of the people, but a great chunk of those, or a percentage of those people, don't truly have the right to vote or the ability or access to the vote. And so there's a lot of manipulation and tricks that take place. And again, they wouldn't be working this hard to keep it out of our hands if having it in our hands didn't mean something.
It's very important. And voter education is real important. Knowing who you voting for, why you voting for. Because some of these politicians be Republicans all their life. And when it's time to run, it's real convenient that now you're an independent. Know who you voting for. You can't come over here because it's convenient now.
That's right. That's right.
Understand that. They'll smile in your face, the best of them.
That's right.
You know, some of them the worst type of politicians, because they smile in your face and they court you and they ain't got your best interest at heart.
I agree.
I want people to represent me that I know it without a shadow of doubt. That person right there that I voted for, they represent me and they represent my interests.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. And we got you know, we open up our church doors and let them just come in because we feel like we just being good Christian people. But let me tell you something, you're not going into their churches and talking about voting for somebody that's going to be against their interests. You think they're going to allow you to go into their churches and do that? You wouldn't get in there. You wouldn't get confirmed to come in with that. But we always trying to prove ourselves righteous. We always trying to prove that we want to do the right thing. We're trying to prove it to a bunch of people who have already proven to you that they have no bottom so low that they won't go in order to vote for and to stand with whoever they want to stand with. You have Christian conservatives who have always, who have held up morality and righteousness and family, they've held up all of these things as good things. And then you have a guy who comes along and he lacks in morality, lacks in spirituality, lacks in being a family man, lacks in being a person of decency and character, but he tickles them on their funny bone with the racist stuff, and that rules out everything else that he's not.
Right, because he held the Bible upside down.
That trumps everything. That trumps everything that he's not. And so they've proven that there's no moral bottom too low that they won't go to. I'm frustrated with us waiting for them to reach a point where they're going to jump off the train. Y'all still waiting on them to decide? It didn't bother. When John McCain was disrespected, that didn't bother y'all. When John McCain died and was disrespected in his death, that didn't bother y'all. When he refused to lower the flags to have staff for other people that he didn't consider to be worthy of his acknowledgement, when he even refused to even acknowledge that John Lewis had passed away and only said peace and prayers or something generic, that didn't bother y'all. When he talked about all the things how he violates women just uncontrollably, I can't stop myself when they come up, I just start doing whatever I got to do. If that didn't bother y'all, I'm no longer waiting for people to wake up and decide that there's a moral bottom that's so low that they won't step to. I'm done with that. I'm done even having that conversation.
I hate to interrupt you, but we only have 3 minutes, Mr. Right. Ken Chambers. So if it's your panel, sir, any way you'd like to close it out, we got 3 minutes.
If anyone else has anything to say, you can say it. But man, I just really appreciate the entire panel and the conversation that's been had. Once again, I just want to reiterate how important it is for us to get out and vote, and for us to take voting serious. Because one thing we got to understand, voting changes things. It changes things in every level of your life. And as soon as we start taking that serious, it's going to help us. Not only going to help us, but it's going to help our communities. It's going to help our families. It affects everything we do. So once again, I just appreciate you guys for sitting up here on this panel. And I hope the information that was given and the things you heard was useful. And that's going to conclude this broadcast.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, guys.
November 3rd.
November 3rd, get out and vote.
3rd.
Vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
It does.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for watching us on YouTube and on Facebook for the 15th Annual Mobile Street Renaissance Festival. That's going to do it for us. God bless you. Vote.
This is an original Soulful music.
This is another Impossible
This is an original instrumental. Soulful music.
This is another Impossible Fossil Pride.
This is an original instrumental. Soulful music. Enjoy.